Are the Dodgers ruining baseball? Because this is the conversation a lot of people are having.
Right.
Because I just have the Dodgers roster pulled up and the Cardinals roster pulled up, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go through the Dodgers roster. And it's interesting to see because a lot of these players, because the Dodgers do have a really good farm system, but just looking at who's on their major league roster, it is fascinating to see that there are two players, and one of the players was a Japanese player that they signed this year or purchased his contract or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
case may be. So essentially, one player that came up through the Dodgers organization is projected to be in their starting lineup versus right-handed pitchers, and that would be Will Smith, the catcher.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else, I mean, and this is just, I mean, this may as well be an all-star team. Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, Max Muncy, Will Smith, Michael Conforto, Tommy, who signed as a free agent this year, Tommy Edman, who the Cardinals traded them, and Haesung Kim, who they signed out of the KBO. And then you go to their starting pitching rotation. Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow, Tony Gonsolin, and Rocky Sasaki, who they, again, signed from Japan. And then you go to their bullpen, Tanner Scott, who they signed as a free agent this year, Kirby Yates, who they signed as a free agent this year, Blake Trinan, Michael Kopech, who they traded for last year. So they are as loaded as I've ever seen a team
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
and obviously spending an immense amount of money to make this happen. So, and then when you compare that to the Cardinals, really the Cardinals, it's their starting pitching that they don't have any homegrown talent other than Andre Palante. But outside of that, it's a lot of players who came up with the Cardinals. And it's because, the Cardinals can't spend like the Dodgers can spend, obviously. So I pose the question to you, Mike. Are the Dodgers ruining baseball?
Yeah. Well, I think yes. Especially among the fan base, because the fan base is going to be, I think Major League Baseball saw an overall rise in attendance this past year and over the past couple years because of the balanced schedule, because of there's a number of things I imagine that go into that, right? But I think that the fans, if the Dodgers continue to just, you know, do what they're doing, I think that the fans are going to say enough is enough. Like this is getting boring, and then they're going to start voting at the ticket office, and then that's going to drive some more discussions, right? But that'll probably be after 2026. I mean, if the Dodgers were to repeat this year as World Series champions, that will be the beginning of the conversation. There is talk about that the Dodgers, for this Japanese pitcher, that this was a deal that was done beforehand. I know there's been some sort of conversation around this that, there were a bunch of different names on the docket. The Cubs were included in that. The Cubs went out to LA to meet with him. Other teams went to LA to meet with him because that's where his agent is. But
Mm-hmm.
there's some, because like, I just, there were posts, social media posts of people just losing their ever loving minds because of course he's going to the Dodgers. Where else would he go? The Dodgers get everybody, and that sentiment is continuing to grow, right? Amongst baseball fans. So I think that that's hurting baseball. Yes. Because if I want to go see a superstar as a baseball fan, let's just say I'm not a fanatic. Let's just say I enjoy going to baseball games. I don't really, my club's middle of the road or lower end of the division or whatever, but I like traveling around to ballparks and I want to see, great players play. Where do you go to see great players play? Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Will Smith. I mean, come on. Those names are all, any one of those names could go on the cover of the video game, right? I mean, that's not it's pretty crazy what they've been able to do. Whereas if you were to go up to the run of the mill fan and say to them, "Hey, who's going to be playing third base for the Chicago Cubs this year, or first base for the Chicago Cubs this year?" A lot of folks, they might not even be able to name our second baseman, right, by name,
Mm-hmm.
but they're going to be able to name almost every position player for the LA Dodgers, right? And I don't think that that's good for baseball in the big picture.
Yeah, and it comes back to our salary cap, salary floor discussion, because it's crazy to me that I'm looking at Spotrax or Spotrax or however you say it. Maybe somebody can teach me a pronunciation lesson. It strikes me as very dystopian. Maybe that's too strong of a word. I don't know. That the Dodgers are spending over $300 million, $330 million. And to be fair, it's not just the Dodgers. The Phillies are spending close to $280 million. The Mets are spending $275 million. The Yankees, $273 million. The Blue Jays, $239 million. They just signed Max Scherzer, didn't they? And then there's kind of a drop off. Texas, $206 million. Houston, $202 million. That's kind of a surprise. But then you scroll all the way down, and you see the Miami Marlins, $43 million in total payroll.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
yeah. Athletics, $54 million. White Sox, $61 million. Pittsburgh, $66 million. Tampa Bay, $72. Cleveland, $76. Washington, $83. Milwaukee, $99. Almost
That's
$100 million. The Reds, $100 million. So
almost more than $200,000 less than the Dodgers. What I say?
More than $250 million less. Yeah.
Jeez.
Like Elon could have donated his $250 million to the Miami Marlins to try to make them more competitive, and he couldn't, and he wouldn't have equaled what the Dodgers are spending
Crazy
in payroll. So I think that, and I am going to take the other side of the argument, not because this is a Skip and Shannon thing, but this is the Dodgers playing the game. The way the rules are set up,
right,
is okay. I can go over that luxury tax if I'm willing to pay the luxury tax, right? And I wish that my team was doing what the Dodgers are doing. Go sign. It's not my money. Go sign this guy. Go bring in this guy. Go bring in Shohei Ohtani. You don't think that the Cubs would have loved to have Shohei Ohtani or all these other superstars? Yeah. I mean, so the Dodgers are playing the game, and they realize, I believe, and this is part of my frustration with the Cardinals, is in the line in Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. And it's true. If you build a winning team, the fans will come and the money will come. And so I think what these smart owners are doing is they're realizing that this is an arms race at the top of the and if we have the money, if these billionaire owners have the money, I mean, $200 million, what's the fine for a luxury tax? And again, I'm an idiot on a couch just talking about this, but like, is it $10 million fine, $20 million fine, $30 million fine? I know it goes up every year,
right?
But to some of these guys, that's a drop in the bucket, really.
Yeah.
And so, like, and there's also the aspect. I mean, I think it was the Mets owner said, I don't really care if I make money on this team or not. Like, I want to win. And that's exactly the kind of mentality that I would love my ownership group to have. So they are playing the game the way that the rules are set up for them to play the game. You know, Sure. Do the Dodgers have a ton of advantages when it comes to location? Well, maybe not now. Like with all the fires and I don't even know how that's affecting a lot of the players out there. And obviously, that's a terrible situation. But historically speaking, geographically speaking, they have some advantages. Being in California, it's a nice place to live.
Oh,
Competitive team.
yeah.
Like they have all the advantages in the world. They've clearly invested in their infrastructure. They've put good people in place. So they're spending money and allocating their resources that are tremendously many, like plentiful, and they're putting it to work in good ways. And their farm system's good. Their big club is good. I mean, they're churning out these championship level teams, and it's because it's baseball, and it's because baseball is the best game, in my opinion, and the most pure game there is, that we haven't seen the Dodgers win year after year after year. It's because a dribbler down the line is just as effective as a smash, one hopper to the center fielder.
Right.
This is baseball. This is the
Right.
game, and it's ultimately, I believe, and this is why teams like the Guardians can make the playoffs, and teams historically who have had lesser payroll can make it to the playoffs and advance in the playoffs and win 3 out of 5 games or 4 out of 7 games or whatever the case may be. And the Dodgers have definitely in seasons underachieved, because when you're the Dodgers, and this is what comes with being the Dodgers and spending all this money on infrastructure and putting these people into place and having these superstars, the expectation is World Series or nothing. It's win or go. It's win the World Series or failure.
Right.
And that so I don't think the Dodgers are ruining baseball, because they are essentially just using, okay, it's kind of like if you and I were to play a board game and we realize, oh, there's no rule that says I can't do this.
Right.
There's no rule that says I can't do this. Now, some people might look at us and go, well, that's not really the spirit of the game. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
But technically, there's no rule that says I can't do this. So you might make up a rule that says, okay, well, you can't do that now. And this is how, rules evolve and the game changes and blah, blah, blah. But in my estimation, the Dodgers are just doing what every other fan base in the world would want their team to do. And if the Cardinals decided, hey, F it, we're going to throw all this cash at players, I would be in seventh heaven.
Right.
So do I dislike the Dodgers? Of course I dislike the Dodgers. I don't like the fact that they're getting everybody that in free agency. It makes the game less fun. But I don't think that they're destroying the game, because I do think it's, at the end of the day, it's baseball. I do think that, would it shock you this year in the playoffs if the Dodgers are knocked off by, I don't know, the Cubs in the playoffs? If the Cubs make the playoffs, the Cubs have a really good team too now, and
Yeah.
there's all these other teams. The Phillies have a good team. Like, they are just giving themselves in a league where every inch matters, every advantage matters. They're giving themselves every single advantage possible.
Right.
And why wouldn't you want to do that? I don't know. That's
And arguably they're paying for it.
yes, yes.
So I get what you're saying. I think that okay. So while you were talking about this, I looked up some bullet points on the luxury tax, because neither one of us is experts in any of this, right? The baseball dictionary, because, and I don't know when this latest edition came out, but the most recent numbers they have is in the baseball dictionary is 2011. But for the 2024 season this year, the threshold, or this past season, the threshold was $237 million. A record 9 teams exceeded the threshold. The Dodgers, Mets, and Yankees were taxed at a 50% rate. because they've exceeded the threshold for 3 or more years in a row. So there you go. Dodgers,
Wow.
Mets,
Wow.
Yankees. Because each year that you exceed it in a row, the rate goes up, right? The
Okay.
Braves and Rangers were taxed at a 30% rate because they exceeded the threshold for a second year in a row. The Astros, the Giants, and the Cubs were taxed at a 20% rate because it was their first time exceeding the threshold, which is why you saw them get rid of Cody Bellinger, right? Because there's a salary dump that happens there. And that's why we have the term salary dump, because we've got to get under the threshold, or we don't want to be over the threshold again, because then it's going to cost a lot more money. There are some clubs, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Mets, that don't care about that. Obviously, they're just going to spend, and maybe that ownership is looking at that from the standpoint of, we're going to do this for a window of time, and then we're going to. But the thing about the Dodgers is, where's the Dodgers farm system right now?
I think it's pretty good. I can double check.
I am pretty sure they're in the top 5, and I could
Yeah.
be wrong on that. But
I'll pull it up right now.
Yep. But so the Dodgers not only have this thing going on where they're paying extra money for the players that they have currently, but they also have a farm system. They've been able to do this, it seems like, year in and year out. And that's where the competitive balance really kind of shifts, in my opinion. If you're able to do both of those things and keep that going for a long period of time, then the danger of those teams commanding the league grows.
Yeah. And Keith Law put out an article January 30th, 2025, so just a couple days ago, as we're recording this on February 1st. Dodgers in his tier 1 of prospect farm systems, they are in tier 1, 3rd overall.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That's ridiculous. Number 1 in spending, number 3 in farm system. I mean, and hats off to them for that, right? Because that's just good. That's just good management of a team, I guess, in the big picture. So the threshold for this past season was 237 million. The threshold increases every year, and I don't know what agreement we're under. But this season, the threshold is going to be 241 million, so up 4 million from last year.
Gotcha. And I wonder, not to make you, go even further with your research project there, but I wonder what happens to that money that teams pay to the. Is it the competitive balance tax? Is that what it's called?
Yep. That's what.
So does that money does that money go to like the Miami Marlins? Like, I don't know.
That is a great question. So it increases. First year's 20%, second year's 30, next is 50. There's also a surcharge threshold for clubs that exceed the base threshold by 20 million or more. So there's other percentages for that, and I don't see where that money goes in the research that I'm doing, but I'm going to find that out. I imagine that it goes to balance the league out. So for the lower tier teams like the Miami Marlins, while their payroll may only be, whatever you said it was, 80 million, then they're also getting paid to do that, in a sense, right? If that's how the competitive tax is allocated.
Gotcha.
I find it interesting that they call it a tax. Like the league is able to tax. Like,
Yeah.
it makes it seem like it's going to the federal government, right?
I know. I like, if anybody knows where this money goes, because I'm trying to find out where it goes. Does it just go to the league or?
No, ready for this? The Major League Baseball, the competitive balance tax money goes to player benefits, retirement funds, and teams that spend less on payroll.
So why would I want to spend more on payroll then, especially if I'm one of these, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well,
Like,
according to this, the goal of the competitive balance tax is to encourage smaller market teams to spend more and discourage excessive spending.
Well, it
why
doesn't. It
would a
doesn't seem to
smaller
be doing that.
well, why would a smaller market team want to spend more if the money that comes from the CBT goes to teams that spend less on payroll? I
Yeah,
mean,
that
that
doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me
well, it
either.
almost I'm not trying to create any stir here, but it's almost like like a welfare program for
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. No, it does seem like
why
that.
would I want to go to work if you're going to pay me not to? You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
it's yeah. Like, why would I spend? And maybe we have this completely wrong. And if somebody wants to,
Yeah.
like, I'll probably clip this section, and there's somebody who can blast us in the chat for not knowing anything. But and just kind of researching this on the fly. But
Let's be clear that that is going to happen because they do know more than us. We're just
yeah,
a couple of buffoons talking about baseball.
that's really it. And then
Yes.
we find out these things, and we're like, wait a minute, what happens? Curiosity that does kill the cat sometimes. But but the point of this is, I agree with you. I don't know why, if I'm the Miami Marlins and I'm sitting there in my office going, wow, the Dodgers, who are in the same division as us, the NL East. Or no, they're not. The Dodgers are in the West. What am I thinking? Let's say we're looking up at the Phillies and the Braves and the Mets. All these teams are spending exponentially more than us. We're sitting there going like, our ownership group won't even spend $50 million on our payroll, and these guys are spending $250 million going over the luxury tax or competitive balance tax for this second consecutive year, for the third consecutive year, paying 50% tax on their
Overage,
on the yeah,
right?
which is more than we're spending on our entire team, if I'm doing the math right. What benefit would it serve us to actually, I don't know, try to maintain a competitive stance with a team like that? Like, the only way that it's possible is if we build up our farm system and churn out talent there. That's the only way that it's possible. But if the Dodgers and the Mets and the Phillies have just as good of a prospect base as we do, because they're able to spend more money and throw more resources at their minor league system than we can, then where does our advantage come from, and what incentive do we have to compete if some of that competitive balance tax money goes to us if we suck?
Yeah, and so here a further breakdown, Seth, of what you're
Mm-hmm.
talking. I find it interesting that of those things that we talked about, the players somehow. So when you sign, who's got the largest contract in baseball right now?
Probably Otani, even though it's a weird contract that pays him like $2 million a year now, and like $8,000 million later. I don't know. Like, it's
Yeah,
a weird.
so that's another thing that teams have done is they've done this thing that's deferred payment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do those things apply to the competitive balance tax? Because the numbers are not figured until the end of the year, right? And so at the end of this fiscal year, Otani, for example, if he's got deferred money on the books, does that apply to the competitive balance tax or does it not? I don't know the answer to that. We'd have to do a lot more research, but I'm going to say not. Just initial blush, right? That's why you would defer a payment, right? Like,
Yeah,
I don't
I
want
don't
to
think
I don't
so.
want it to go on the books for this year because then my tax rate's going to go up, and then but if I'm saying I'm going to spend this on you Bobby Bonilla style
Yeah.
in
Mm-hmm.
years in the future, then that tax won't apply to me now. And surprise, surprise, the Mets were in on that. But so here's how, more specifically, how the CBT is distributed. The player benefits, the first $3.5 million of the CBT is used for player benefits. So if I'm a player and Soto gets signed to a $300 million contract that none of it's deferred, that's great because that means that all the other players are going to celebrate that signing because we're going to get more money on our benefits, right? So then retirement funds, okay? Half of the remaining CBT money is used to fund players' individual retirement accounts. So big contract. All right, more money my way. Teams that spend less. The other half of the remaining CBT money is distributed to teams that spend less on payroll. This is done to help smaller market teams compete. And then there's media disruption distribution for those who have a decline in local media revenue, television, all that kind of thing. And then there is a supplemental commissioner's discretionary fund. Okay, now it's starting to rub me the wrong way in a big way, right? Portion of the CBT money is used to reward teams that grow their revenues outside of media. So I guess the commissioner gets to give money to teams that grow their revenue without growing their television revenue. So
I wonder, and to be fair, I wonder how much of a percentage that is.
well, it just says that a portion of it, because it's interesting to me. According to this, the first 3.5 million is player benefits. Half of the remaining money. So let's just throw a figure out there. $100 million is what the CBT makes, right? Just to be round. So, well, the first 3.5 million is going to go to player benefits. So what does that leave you with? $96.5 million left. The other half of that money, so what is that? 46 million, 46 and a half, is distributed to teams that spend less on payroll. And then it just says a portion of the money and then a portion of the money. So you've got, there's about half of that money left that can be used to help teams that have had media distribution disruptions. And then half of that money that is up to the commissioner to give to teams who have shown a growth in revenue outside of media.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
A lot of cogs in that wheel. Like, holy cow. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd you like to be a
wow.
bookkeeper for the majors?
I bet they stay busy.
Oh boy.
You think Manfred's in there like, how much money can I give to the, I don't know, the Detroit Tigers this year for I
don't know, my sometimes opinions on Manfred, but I do guarantee this, he's wearing a bow tie.